Welcome to On the Bubble Podcast, episode 132. I'm your host, Subasa J. Witt, and with me, the co-host Yuki Lee Bender. Today, we're going to be talking about decks to play for the current RTN season. This RTN season started last Saturday for us, and it's going to be like until end of this month, I think. The new qualification method for the Nationals is going to be about how well you do at these RTNs and how many you play. So, we're just going to talk about which decks that I think are going to be the most represented and which decks to kind of watch out for this season. But I guess before we do that, we can first talk about our RTN that we went to this weekend. How'd you do this weekend, Yuki?
I did quite well. So we both went to the same RTN. It was in Seattle. Both of us, I think, had kind of the same realization that we only have two local RTNs, and one of them I can't make because I'm going to Japan for calling Akihabara, and the other one Jay can't make for different reasons. And that meant we only got to play one RTN at the very end of the season if we don't travel for any. As Jay mentioned, with the qualifications being either top four or your experience that you gain playing RTNs. Well, if you only play one RTN, your experience doesn't really help you. Even if you like 5-0 Swiss and then lose top 8, like you're just not going to get there on XP. So interestingly, this event is kind of somehow very hard to qualify for, especially if you are missing RTNs to play other events, whatever they may be. So we both kind of had the same idea, drive down to Seattle, and I took Kasai. I played something kind of similar to Chris's deck. I'll probably post a small update about the RTN and how all that went. But yeah, I played a Kasai deck. I went 4-0 in Swiss and then 0-2 in the last two rounds. So I did 4-2 overall. And I think I got like 6th or 7th seed, something like this. It was like a 48 player RTN, something like this. And then 47. Okay. Yeah, we had a bye, so it must have been an odd number. So yeah, Kasai treated me pretty well. I was quite happy with the deck. I definitely did not feel comfortable on the deck. Like I was missing some Dynamo's triggers. I paid into grains to make a vigor and then realized I didn't have a resource to finish my turn. Things like this. Like I just made a couple like pretty bad mistakes throughout not all of my games, but enough of them. And I think part of it was maybe driving down the morning of and having not quite slept enough. But I also think part of it was just lack of paper reps on the deck. There's sort of like just a lot of triggers and a lot of tokens and a lot of like moving cards from your graveyard to your banish and just kind of like a lot of like stuff to manage. And I had played online, but hadn't really played much in person. And I think it kind of showed. I ended up losing in finals to Griffin, who made top 4 at calling Seattle. He was on Gravy Bones, same deck he played for Seattle, and yeah, so I got my qualification. That's what I was going for. I was pretty happy with the result. My loss was a little bit unfortunate. I kind of I had a turn where I blocked away my go again because I thought I had Unsheathed, which is +3 and go again, but it turned out I had Outland Skirmish in my hand, which doesn't give go again, and then I realized that I just like missed a second attack, and I think that attack had like a slice and that turn had like a slice and dice, so I missed like 5 damage and a Dynamo's trigger or something like this. It was not good. It was really bad.
I guess the Kasai cards do look pretty similar, right? Like all of them are just like a warrior type looking person with a sword in sand.
Yeah, it's kind of like red, lots of red because there's probably some blood somewhere. Yeah, they all kind of similarish, and yeah, definitely my bad. Definitely like a silly mistake to make. I sort of like made that mistake and made a mistake on a blood on her hands pretty early on in the game. Like I just chose the wrong mode, and I think I only missed like 1 point of value from that. But made some really bad mistakes, clawed it back to 1-1 life totals at the very end, and then lost. And I was like, if I didn't miss a point of value and then like 6 points of value, game probably would have been better.
Well, either way, you still got your qualification for RTN, so you don't have to sweat about not qualifying for nationals anymore.
Yeah, that was sort of the goal. So I'm very happy with that, and congrats to Griffin. He played really well. That's not an easy Gravy Bones matchup, so well played by him. Definitely deserving of the win.
Yeah, I also went to the same one. I was going to play Gravy for this event, I was like kind of like locked into playing Gravy maybe like 4 or 5 days before the event, and I was like putting some reps on with Gravy, and then I just kind of forgot to ask people for to borrow Gravy cards, and then by the time I realized it was about 2 a.m. of the day of the on the day that we were leaving for the Seattle RTN, and then I go, it's kind of unreasonable to start messaging people and asking people for like Eye of Ophidia and like riches that I didn't have at the time to just like play an RTN. So I ended up just playing my Huntsman deck that I played for Seattle with a very small change. It was actually pretty good. I ended up going 4-2 as well. It was I had the draw in round 2 and then I lost round 5. So I didn't actually see the standings, but I'm assuming I came ninth or 10th. That's probably right, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so if I just like had my draw like round 3 instead, or if I like got my loss on round 6, I would definitely make it in. But yeah, just like how the pairings went up, it just didn't. I kind of got my losses in the wrong order, so I couldn't top 8. So that was my run with Huntsman. It was pretty funny though. I did bring Huntsman, and I'm just like, Florian's not gonna be there anymore, right? Like the deck's not that good anymore. The same people that usually play Florian brought Florian still, so I got paired into them and I lost to them. It was just like, every time I come to Seattle's RTNs or Pro Quests and I bring Huntsman, I just get demolished by some random Florian player. It's so bad.
Yeah, Florian quite popular. I played the same Florian and also lost to him. That was in Swiss. I think the last round of Swiss.
Yeah, yeah, it's yeah. I think Florian's an okay deck. I'm not sure about him right now. I think that's where I'll put him right now.
Yeah, we'll talk about Florian when we go through all the heroes. I think, yeah, it's interesting. Okay, one thing I want to ask you before we kind of start talking about all of the RTN, like our thoughts on RTN decks, is what do you think of the RTN qualification changes? So basically, before RTNs would basically take everyone who top forward an RTN would be qualified. And then, depending on the size of your country, there would be like a certain number of players that the event would be. I think ours was like 128, I want to say, something like this. And then they basically would fill in. So if there was like 80 players qualified from winning RTNs, the remaining players would qualify based on ELO. Of course, ELO is gone now, so that is not something that they will be using. And instead, this time they used XP, and specifically they used XP that you get from playing RTNs. So anytime you win a match at an RTN, you get some XP, and basically whoever won the most games across all the RTNs they played would be the highest on the leaderboard, and then and so on. So it would basically do the same thing. Look at that XP leaderboard from RTNs for your country and infill with people until you reach the cap. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about this system? Do you like it? Don't like it?
It's a little bit weird, or it's kind of unfair, at least for exactly our area, which is West Coast Canada. And I guess it gets even worse for the people who are in the interiors of Canada. Actually, we get like a third or a quarter of the RTNs that exists compared to like the East Coast, right? Like the East
Mhm.
Coast almost has like an event every weekend, whereas like we got two in like mainland Vancouver area, and then we have to go to Victoria, which is like a ferry ride away, and so we get 3 in BC.
And it's like 3 hours to get there, basically, too. So yeah, it's like not super easy to get to. Like driving to Seattle is probably easier than going to the island and playing that one, or at least comparable.
Well, it's cheaper for sure.
It's cheaper, yeah. The ferry is expensive and takes quite a bit of time. So yeah, it's definitely like a little hard to access events. It's funny because I remember reading about this on Twitter, and some people weren't fans, and I was sort of like, I don't get it. I was like rewarding consistency at RTNs just seems so good. Like this just makes a lot of this change makes a ton of sense. I think what I didn't register when when they said this, like when they posted this, was that is instead of Elo, I guess, or I guess like World Tour points would probably be the closest equivalent now. And I kind of get it because like World Tour points haven't been used for qualifications, and maybe they don't want to like start it there. I don't know. Like maybe in the future they'll use World Tour points. I'm sort of hoping that, but it does make it so that if you're in an area that doesn't have many events, nationals is somehow just like super hard to qualify for. Like it's only top four. Like anyone in top four gets to qualify. So in that sense, it is like easier than winning a PQ. But surprisingly, like I was like, huh, I'm kind of like stressed out about this nationals qualification, and in a way that like I don't know if I've been stressed out about a qualification for a tier 3 or 4 event for like quite some time, because like usually like elo's a thing, like there's like other ways to qualify, and that usually like puts me in a pretty good spot. But that's what I'm like, man, if I don't do something about this, I play one event and I get one shot, and it's just pretty easy to top 8 and lose to somebody who's really good, and or you have a bad matchup in quarters, you know, like it's just not that hard for that to happen. So yeah, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of the system either. It feels a little, yeah, a little bit too lopsided based on where you live and how much access to events you have. And I sort of hope, I hope that they go back to World Tour points.
I'm not a fan of the World Tour points either, though. World Tour points really is hard to get if you aren't playing the Pro Tour, and like you have to
That's
either
true.
travel to a calling, right, or play a battle harden, and like what the regular person's gonna have like one shot at a calling, maybe two, right, in a specific season.
That's true. Like I guess like not enough of our locals really have World Tour points for it to like matter for them. Like there's like a handful of players that have World Tour points. So it's like I guess I can see why they don't use World Tour points. I don't know. Maybe this is just like the best we can do. I'm not sure. Like maybe there's no other system, but yeah, it's a little. It's like not like a huge problem. I don't think it's like so bad, but I don't love it either.
Yeah, I don't think there's like a really good or like a clean fix to this. Maybe like even if there was like an event level that was like not armory, but like in between an armory and road to nationals, and use that as a qualification measure, might be an okay system. But like that would require to change the armory system too a little bit. So there's like other fixes that LSS could take. It's just that for this road to nationals, we don't really have any good metric that kind of like applies to the armory level players that wants to qualify for nationals.
You know, they used to just use XP, like not just RTN XP, but just like I think it was like 90-day XP. I kind of wouldn't mind if they just used 90-day XP again, because I feel like I remember a lot of our locals qualifying on 90-day XP. You can get it from just like attending Armory regularly, and it does reward you for getting wins, of course, in addition to playing a lot. And RTNs still are weighted more because they're usually double the XP compared to Armory. So maybe including Armory in there levels the playing field a little bit, where like if you're somebody who goes to Armory like 2 or 3 times a week really consistently, and then you also play like 2 RTNs and you do well at them, and you generally do well at Armory, you're probably like much better off, much more likely to get there on XP, and you can also kind of see the leaderboard and know where you're at. Um, as opposed to this RTN system where you like, that's the other thing. Like you don't really know where you're at. Like there technically like must be like a leaderboard that's generated, but you can't actually view it. So you don't necessarily know exactly where you're at. But it's sort of just like you do the math and you're just like, well, my understanding is that like on the East Coast, and maybe this is wrong, but on the East Coast you can play kind of like almost an event each day. So like 2 each weekend. If you play somebody that plays 8 or even like 6 events, it's sort of like it doesn't really matter how good your win rate is if you play 2 events compared to their 6. You're like, unless they're just like O2 dropping everything, you're not gonna beat them. And there's gonna be some players out there that are playing 6 events and doing reasonably, getting like 3 wins at each of them or something. And there's just kind of no way to keep up with that.
Yeah. But you know what? Nothing we can do at this point. We just have to kind of go with whatever Ellis has said. So At least for myself, I'm definitely gonna go to Tacoma next weekend, and that's like what, a 4-hour drive away from me. And yeah, we will try again and try and get some XP slash top four of the event. So wish me luck.
Yes, good luck, Jay. Hope that you get your qualification. It's also funny, like I think I might not. Usually I just like play all my RTNs. I don't know if I'm gonna play my local RTN at the end of the season, just because yeah, taking I think before it felt like if people really wanted to qualify, they could probably qualify. Like a lot of the players would get there on Elo, and most of like the dedicated players would get to go to nationals. But this year, I'm just like, oh, we have a lot of strong locals, and I kind of don't. I think that taking that invite actually is pretty meaningful and does hurt the local scene. And so, yeah, I might just like not play more, which is, um, I mean, I guess PQs work this way, and maybe I don't know if this is like the intent of the system, but it's like interesting that that's like a decision point to think about now.
Well, because we have very little RTNs to do, I don't
Yeah,
think most of our locals aren't gonna make it through by just XP alone, unless like they top eight both events or something.
yeah, and even then, like you probably have to you have to probably travel for a few others or something like this.
Yeah, probably. Okay. Then enough about the system. Did you wanna just talk about the tier list that we think is gonna be good for at least this month?
Yeah, we can do that. Before we do that, just really quick Patreon shout out. Thank you so much to all of our patrons who give back to the show. We couldn't be doing what we're doing without you. So yeah, we really appreciate you just giving back whatever you can. Recently I posted kind of like my first thoughts on Syndra, and this week probably another small update. Probably post a little bit about the Kasai list I played and some of my like more in-depth RTN experience, like matchup by matchup, like a small tournament report kind of thing. And yeah, if you want to check that out on Patreon, you can. Patreon.com/on the bobble. And if you're looking to buy singles, especially through a Canadian vendor, you can check out Invasion. It's invasioncnc.ca. And you can use code YLB5 to get 5% off your checkout on all your singles. And that will let them know that we sent you. And yeah, it will help support us, and it will help get you some discount on your singles if you decide to purchase from them. So yeah, thank you to all of our patrons, and thank you to all of our listeners as well. So yeah, we appreciate all of you very much.
Okay, so let's just start from the top and talk about what decks we just think are tier one in this current meta right now. Obviously, this isn't set in stone or anything, and I feel like the meta will still evolve because the ban list just did come out, and this is the first time we're seeing events um for this format essentially. So let's start with the tier one decks. Do you want me to read it out or do you want to go through them?
Yeah, we can just kind of go through one by one, I guess. Or we can read it out. I guess there's like worth noting that we currently, as of recording, don't have access to the wins for week one, so we're not going off of that. We're just kind of going off of our perceived strength of the heroes based on games that we've played and what we know about the game. So in tier one, our first deck is the one that I played, Kasai. Kasai's had really strong performances. She won the Calling Seattle before the ban list, actually, and also won the Battle Hardened. That was in the hands of the Battle Hardened was in the hands of Shoma, and then Chris Ayali won Calling Seattle. And then I believe she also had 2 copies in Calling Hong Kong, which is the kind of only event that we've had after the ban list. It was literally the first week. So Kasai's been having good tournament results, and I think just lines up pretty well into the meta. You're good into Gravy. Your Verdance matchup is a lot more playable now with Blood Follows Blade and Rootbound being gone. You're okay into Marionette, and you're kind of just okay into most stuff. She's very solid, has some really good math, and was already good before the BNR. So I think Kasai is definitely um, one of the tier one decks at the moment.
Very hard deck to play against. You just have like really awkward blocking decisions all game, and like you kind of just like have to block Kasaya because they have so many on hits, and they just like are still a warrior, right? Like if you block, you can get punished still because they still have the like what is that blue card that gives go again? Glint.
Yeah, Glint the Quicksilver. And sometimes you block an attack. They don't have the most, the Kasai decks don't have the most tricks to push their attack higher, but they do still have Blade Flurry. So sometimes you block out their attack and they can Blade Flurry over, and maybe you can commit the D react, but it only pumps it by 2, so you're usually kind of wasting some of the defense of the D react. It's like, yeah, she's tricky to block against.
Yeah, it does definitely take some practice to play against, and if it's your first time playing against Kasai, which I feel like a lot of people are gonna be their first time playing in these RTNs, it's just be careful. Like the moment you forget about the Centauri Saber getting +1 because you're blocking with a attack action, it can really mess up your turns and your blocking.
Yeah, yeah. Kasai's sort of interesting because she just like she was a deck in heavy hitters, and like Mist Veil happened, and she's kind of just like not around, and she couldn't really keep up with like Aurora either. So she's been kind of like out of the spotlight for a while, but she's gotten some really good upgrades with Unsheathed and Blood Follows Blade recently, and with some of the Earth decks losing some tools. I think Kasai's just like finally in a good spot, and those couple upgrades they just feel super meaningful. I'm really impressed by how much she is always able to block well. Like she has great armor, she has Valiant Dynamo, she can play a whole bunch of D reacts, basically whole decks 3 blocks. But now she's also just able to do a lot of damage. She's kind of put you in the spot of like, I block really well, I send back efficient return. Maybe I have like a Kasai activation, so I get on hit gold, and that gold will give me a ton of value. And if you just block me out, I'm kind of okay with that too, because I'm gonna send back like, I don't know, just like 14 damage on my 4 card hand, and like that's just like pretty good. It's like, she's not Syndra, but she actually has quite a bit of pressure, and that's like the thing that's really impressed me about the deck. Oh, and Riches is really good in that deck too.
Yeah. Okay. Then next on the list we can talk about is Gravy Bones, right? Like Gravy Bones is going to be a tier 1 deck. It was a tier 1 deck a month ago. It's still going to be a tier 1 deck. He did get a card banned from him, but this deck is still just disgusting, right?
Yeah, it's still very good. Like, don't get me wrong. Chart the High Seas is a strong blue, but Gravy has access to so many strong blues. You can simply just play something else. I think also, arguably, Gravy might have more flexibility now. Chart really incentivized you to build almost exclusively into blues and yellows. Reds still have a cost, like you want to fit blues off your swells when you're cracking gold. If you hit reds, it can be kind of problematic. But I think if you want to play stuff like red saltwater swell or red swiftwater sloop, those are cards you can more easily play again. So I think that even though Gravy probably lost a little bit of power, it's just not that meaningful.
I don't think Gravy's like good matchups actually got worse. Like all the decks that Gravy was already good against is just like Gravy's still good against those decks. And then all the decks that Gravy was kind of like bad against, it's like I guess like Gravy can't high roll them anymore, but like it's not like you know what I mean. How do I say this? All the decks that Gravy was bad against, Gravy like it didn't really change much for them, right? Like now they just get high rolled a little bit less.
Yeah, I think the best way to put it is like Chart is a powerful card. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's like so essential to Gravy that like any of your matchups really depended on this card. It just made your deck a little better. Like you had this powerful blue, you got maybe like a little bit more gold, a little bit more access to allies, and all of that does matter. But you have ways to make up for it. Like now they can play riches to supplement their gold, and that's one more no block, and that is something. But Gravy wasn't reliant on using chart to win any of these matchups. The chart was just kind of like a tool in the kit, and it maybe brings him down like 1 or 2% in power level or something, but it's not like he needed. This wasn't like a linchpin for playing against aggro or fatigue or like any of the decks trying to combat him. It was just sort of like a card that was there that was like kind of good, but it wasn't like part of his main engine, and it also isn't part of like any particular strategy. So it's sort of like, yeah, you just like trim a little bit of power from the deck, but it's like overall like not impacting any particular matchup all that much.
Yeah. That's exactly kind of what I wanted to say. Thank you, Yuki. Okay,
Do you want to go to the next deck, or do you have more to say about Gravy?
next deck's good.
Okay, next up, Verdance. Verdance won Calling Hong Kong right after the ban list. She did lose Rootbound Carapace, which makes it definitely harder to get online. You have to play 3 real decomposers on your turn. A lot of decks have turned to blue Cadaverous Tilling as some additional decompose. Verdant's still really good. Storm Striders is really strong with six power spells. You still have a lot of reach. You still have the combo plan, which the combo plan in particular loses almost nothing with the Rootbound ban. And yeah, I don't know. The deck's still really good into. I think one of the draws to Verdance was that there was a bunch of decks like Guardians, for example, a lot of the slower decks that just don't have the tools to deal with your combo, and that's still the case. And then the rest of the decks, you still have your you just play a big attack every turn, you play some Fellings, and then you kill them with Storm Striders, and you can still do all of those things with Verdance pretty effectively. So I think Verdance still a really good choice, and maybe the biggest loss for Verdant with Rootbound is that I think your Gravy matchup gets meaningfully worse. It's harder to get online. That's the matchup where I think getting online matters the most because you get to ping down their allies. So that does hurt Verdant, but yeah, all of it's like her already bad matchup got worse, but her good matchups are still similarly good. So pretty good place to be overall.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like the root bound bannings actually just like kind of made the deck more linear and a little bit easier to play in a sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it like obviously it's like you lost a 4 block, so like it's not a good thing. But a lot of people just replace this 4 block with a Fate Foreseen, so like your draws just got a little bit smoother. I wonder if the Verdance deck actually just got like better into a lot of decks over the Rootbound Carapace because like I don't know how important it is for Verdance to be online, or like it's not like Florian where you would just need to be online as soon as possible, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest shift in Verdance is that resolving your first tilling becomes super, super important, and um, just to get your fellings and plow unders online. And I guess the extension of this is that you felling or plow under for 4 or 2 as your first decompose, just a little more than you did before, because sometimes that's what you got to do. It's the best thing you can do. So you do that play, and so yeah, so on some of your games, you're going to lose like 4 value, where like you would have been able to draw a root bound and decompose and then felling. So I think that is like the biggest shift for her, as well as losing a little flexibility, like you said. Like you get like priced into playing these cadaverous tillings, and she's like a little slightly more on rails than she was before. Yeah, I think that the loss is not so big overall.
Yeah, basically just like her aggro matchups just got worse, right? Like if you just don't give Verdance time, then she would just kind of fall off.
Yeah, yeah. But that being said, she could still do the Earth thing where she just like draws in the right order, and she plays a tilling, then she plays a felling, then she plays a felling, and then she's online, and you're just like, man, nothing's changed about this deck. So the games where she just like draws everything in the right order, you don't notice the difference at all. It's just if you draw the deck slightly out of order, Rootbound used to be able to fix it a bit because you could like draw Rootbound and Felling together, and then just go Rootbound on your turn, Felling on my turn. This Felling is for 8, and like suddenly I'm almost online. You can't do that anymore. So she's a little more like got to draw everything in the right order to be max power level, but her ceiling feels almost identical to how it did before.
Then the last tier 1 deck that we have here is Marionette. So Arachne Marionette did get a banning of the 2 Orb Weavers in the yellow and the blue, but the red one is still legal, and I feel like this deck just like went the other way from Verdance. If it felt like really on rails of what it kind of wanted to do with like the 9 Orb Weaver Spinnerets, and now it feels like a lot more flexible on what the deck can do. And you actually just like have more options in your deck now, which makes it a little bit harder to play against, at least right now, where you don't actually know which attack reactions they're playing and which disruptive attacks they're playing now.
Yeah, you can still very much build heavily into daggers if you want to, and just basically you have to commit the headpiece more often to flip into Orb Weaver to get your Chalicer online ASAP. But that's not really a huge deal. So you can take the deck that direction, but you can also play more stealth cards. And I think we saw when Law's Calling Hong Kong list, where he made finals with, have more of that stealth direction, and even playing Razor's Edge, the +3 attack reaction on stealth cards, because he had a high enough stealth count to support that. And that works well with Meat Madness from the Armory deck, which is pretty solid stealth card. So yeah, you can kind of be more stealth, more dagger, or something in the middle. And yeah, we'll see exactly where they land. I think that the stealth cards generally are better into the more aggressive decks, the decks that don't want to block you as much, and then the daggers do a little bit better against the blocky decks because you just have a whole bunch of reactions, and it's really, really, really hard to block Marionette out over a long period of time because they keep making you guess and you can't keep guessing, and the D reacts help you, but they have more attack reacts than you have D reacts, basically.
And it's also tricky that like you don't really know which one they're on until like maybe halfway through the game.
Yeah, because there's so many cards that are played in both of these. Even the dagger focus lists still play, Kiss of Death and Mark of the Black Widow. So you still see some of these stealth cards. It definitely takes a while to realize exactly how their build is set up.
This is one of those decks that I want to kind of work on. This is, I play a lot of Huntsman, a lot of Assassin, and I feel like Marionette now is kind of like the style of deck that I really like playing, of like, you can really mix people up, you can really start playing different cards and just like kind of get them on the different types of reaction that people just don't expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think if anyone's like looking for a kind of, I would say like Marionette's sort of like a aggressive, disruptive deck that has a little bit of like a combo-ish element to it for the most part. You can also like mess around with exactly how you build the deck. I'm sure you could lean slightly more defensive or do other things with it too, but generally that's how the deck's played. What I would say about Marionette is if you're thinking of bringing Marionette to your ProQuest, make sure you have a few reps on it. There's quite a bit going on with managing all your flips and understanding what you can flip into. If you're playing with Codex of Inertia, that card has some pretty tricky routing. Just like understanding how to use it and maximize it is not always easy. And managing your daggers and understanding exactly when you're supposed to flick is honestly quite a skill. I think there's like a lot of, it's pretty easy to pick up Marionette and do okay with it, but there's a lot of small optimizations that I think do matter. So getting some reps with the deck is really helpful. I think Marionette and Gravy are probably on the harder end to pick up, and Verdance and Gasai are on the easier end to pick up, I guess is what I would say of the decks we've talked about so far.
Yep, I agree with you. So those were our tier 1 decks. So we had Kasai, Gravy, Verdance, and Marionette for our tier 1 decks. And I feel like this format is pretty open. So like we're gonna start talking about our tier 2 decks next, but I feel like these you can play any deck in tier 2 and still like win your RTM pretty convincingly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for RTNs, this is always the case for RTNs and PQs, but maybe even especially this season, if you kind of know what your locals are playing, it helps you a lot because most of these decks, we'll kind of talk about them in the context of tier 1 and maybe in the context of each other, but most of these decks have like some good matchups and some bad matchups, and that's kind of why the meta is so as wide as it is. And if you kind of understand what your locals are bringing and you have a couple of deck choices, you might be able to pick one that lines up better into what you think the strong players in your area are playing. Like, for example, like a lot of these decks don't want to play Acilio. And so if you know there's Acilios, you either need some tech for that deck or maybe you should take a deck that's good into Acilio if you know there's a lot of that in your area. But then other areas will have almost no Acilios and you don't have to worry about that. And I think there's like a whole bunch of I think there's just like a whole bunch of decks in this category that just sort of depending on what show up, they get relatively better or worse.
Yeah. Super agree with you. Super agree with you. Like if you know your whole meta likes playing aggro, I would stay away from Verdance at this time. Okay, then let's talk about what's on the top of the tier 2 lists. So first you have Florian with a question mark. Do you think Florian is almost tier one?
Florian's really interesting to me. I've heard really mixed things about this deck. I know at Seattle, some people brought it. There wasn't one in top eight. I heard some discussion about Florian being good, Florian not being good. I know like Marco, who was always big on Florian, was sort of like, I'm not playing this deck at Columbus. There's no way I'm so off of it. But at the same time, I also know that this weekend, Michael Yazaker ended up winning his RTN on a pretty aggressive looking Florian deck. It still has DRX, it still can play that defensive role, but it has, I think, like 20 attacks with Go Again and Channel Mount Heroics and Channel Millennium Trees, so it can really push a lot of damage too. And that deck looks pretty interesting. I played a little bit against a very similar concept and a little bit against that deck itself, and it seems quite strong. Also, really good into Kasai. And my big question mark about this deck is how's the Gravy and Verdance matchup? But I think that Yazakar played against Dilks, and Dilks was on Gravy. Dilks, they were the two finalists at Worlds, and if he can beat Dilks Gravy, then that's like kind of interesting. The go again attacks and all the pressure probably helps a lot with that, and I could see that plan also being much better into Verdance too. So I think that Florian maybe required a bit of a bigger rework. Like it's hard to play the defensive style where you just preserve life total, get online, and then grind out value with grasp and the extra rune chance. But this more aggressive style might actually be quite good. So Verdict's a little bit out on this Florian deck, but yeah, I think there's a world where if this Florian is solid into Gravy and Verdance and you're already naturally good into Kasai and Marionette, like this deck is just really good, right? So it's interesting. Yeah, I think this is one to keep an eye out on. I'm very curious to see where Florian goes, and I think if Florian becomes top tier, it probably changes the way that the meta looks. Maybe like the decks in tier one and two don't change, but maybe their relative positioning to each other would shift, I think.
Okay, okay. So you're saying that like Florian got really affected by the root bound bannings,
Mhm.
and that's kind of like forcing Florian to move in like to change like the deck. Like the whole deck is kind of changed, right? It's like a completely different deck from what we saw from like 2 months ago, 1 month ago. So if they change their whole deck, then it might just be a tier one deck.
I think it might be, and I think it's interesting because I know, like, I've seen this aggro CMH Florian deck before. The big problem with this deck, I think, was that you have more two blocks, and so then you suddenly start getting punished really hard by Syndra for having all those two blocks. And I think to have a good Syndra matchup, you need to be quite defensive. So you're kind of pulled in this weird direction where, like, yes, you can build into this variant, and maybe it's a little bit better into some of these other matchups, but Syndra is really hard for you. And I also think that this is maybe a deck where, I think when you're playing this aggressive strategy, losing the root bound ban into like, or losing the root bound into Gravy or Verdance doesn't really matter so much since you're wanting to be proactive. But I think that Verdance and Gravy both did lose something in the matchup against you. Like I think actually Rebound's kind of important against against Florian for being able to get online and threaten that combo without losing too much life, especially if they are attacking you a lot. So I think this strategy just like lines up better into Verdance post ban, and Gravy's now at least a little bit weaker. So I think all of those things coming together lets the deck be built in this way and just like benefit more, because I think like you could build this deck in this way before. We had a local that was playing this style of Florian, and it was pretty solid, but I think it had a few more problems, and I think just like the way that the bans have shaped the meta make this quite a bit stronger is like sort of my initial take. But yeah, it's still early, still need to do testing. There's like so much going on in this format, so much to explore. It's hard to say for sure, but I think Florian could be a top tier deck.
Okay, okay, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, that's honestly, I'll be very okay with the Florian deck moving aggressive and playing a lot more like this than the very grindy defensive style of Florian. But I'm assuming they can still just do that too if they really need to.
Yeah, yeah. You still the list still has like 9 reacts in it. You still have bark skin and all the equipment, so you still block pretty good. You have more two blocks, but you still block pretty well.
Then let's move on and talk about the next deck. We have Fang. This is a deck that we saw Ponkaj play at our RTN, and he also top aided. This deck looked pretty good.
Yeah, he was really high on it. His sort of take was that he thinks Fang is largely a better Kasai. Basically, if you run through the decks that we have, I think Fang's favored into Kasai. Into Gravy, I think both decks are better. Kasai might be a little better, but I think Fang's still favored into Gravy. Into Verdance, Fang's definitely bad. I think Kasai has a better Verdance matchup, but still not a good one. So it's sort of like, okay, you have a better bad matchup, but it's like not exactly a great reason to play the deck either. And then Marionette, I know Pankaj was saying felt quite favored. So whereas Kasai, I think is like close, maybe slightly unfavored against Marionette. So you're better into all of those. And then if Florian is a deck that's showing up, Fang is really good into Florian. Kasai is very bad into Florian. So yeah, there's like a real angle here where maybe Fang is actually the better warrior, which I thought was an interesting take. And the more I kind of like looked at some of the games that Pankaj was playing, like ended the round and thought about it, the more I could see, yeah, maybe Fang is like another deck that has a lot of potential, especially if Florian starts to do better because that matchup is traditionally quite good for Fang.
I feel like Kasai and Fang is very similar, but Fang really just gets to get the go again from the weapon a little bit easier, right? Than Kasai. They get to play a little bit better attack reactions. Is kind of my image of it. Do you agree with me, or?
Yeah, I think that Fang is sort of like he has this ramp up time, but once he's online, he probably has a little more value than Kasai and can be a little more explosive than Kasai. And typically, the thing that really punishes Fang is aggressive strategies and Verdance because she can scour your fealties. um, but the meta is like kind of slower right now. Like Kasai, Gravy, Verdance, these are all not the fastest decks. Marionette is a little bit on the faster side, but Fang gets to play a whole bunch of D-reacts and kind of extend the game. I think basically Syndra was a really poor matchup for Fang, and Syndra is still a deck that's around. We'll get to Syndra, but she's no longer. I think she's no longer at the very top of the meta like she was. She's definitely worse, and I think that helps Fang a lot, basically.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, I don't know enough about Fang to talk about it any more than this. Do you want to just move on?
Yeah,
So the next deck on the list is Acilio. This deck's really, really powerful, has a high ceiling, and it just always does well. But you had a take that was kind of funny to me. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the one thing I'll say about Acilio is Acilio does have a weakness in that Amulet of Echoes is a really strong tech card against him. Basically, your usual combo is like Gone in a Flash with Lightning Greaves, and you have Amulet of Echoes so that when they play the Gone in a Flash for the second time, you take their turn essentially, like, or you take two cards from them, which really lowers their pop off on that Lightning Greaves turn and makes it way harder for them to win the game. They can still win through Amulet of Echoes. I think a good Asio can win through it, but it makes it much harder. And I feel like with Kano leaving the format, a lot of people just have a little bit of extra sideboard space because they don't have to pack extra AB or Oasis or like whatever they were playing for Kano. And a lot of those decks can just play some Amulet of Echoes at that spot. So I feel like I just see so many of Amulet of Echoes in people's lists these days. I played some in my Kasai list because I was like, I have a bad Acilio matchup. How do I fix it? Amulet of Echoes. And I went 3-0 into Acilios at the RTN. So um, yeah, I think Acilio is really strong. I think he will kind of be like the new Kano of the format, the combo deck. I think he might be more wide. I think he already was more widely adopted than Kano was, but he is vulnerable to hate pieces. And if you have a lot of Acilio, Amulet of Echo is really good against him. And if you're wanting to play Acilio, I think having a lot of practice against Amulet of Echoes is important. I know cards like Somersault can be a card that you can play to bounce and empty your hand, and yeah, there's some interesting lines that don't play into Amulet of Echoes, like especially if you have blasts and other things like this. But yeah, Amulet of Echo is still really good against Cecilio for sure.
Yeah, just the portion that you just said of like, Kano is gone now, so what do I do with the two extra open spaces? We put two Amulet of Echoes in. Was just so funny to me, and I'm just like, You're so right. Like that's you just get to do this and like make it miserable for the Cilio players. Like, imagine like every single person has two amulet echoes. Like, do I really want to bring a Cilio into like a field of like 5 rounds or 6 rounds of just like amulet echoes in everyone's decks? I think my answer is gonna be no. And that's like kind of a big reason why we put a Cilio in tier 2 and not tier 1.
Yeah, I think power level wise, Acilio is kind of a tier one deck. And you look and it's like Acilio is just good into Gravy, good into Verdant, good into Kasai. Your Marionette matchup's fine. It's like maybe a bit unfavored. So like by that logic, Acilio is probably just a tier one deck. But I think the problem is these decks can bring in Amulet of Echoes, and then their matchup into you gets much much more playable, like maybe even or maybe slightly favored kind of thing. So yeah, basically these decks usually just like go max aggression and then bring in Amulet of Echoes and hopefully they kill you. It's like kind of the recipe against Cecilio. If you're struggling against Cecilio, I'd recommend Amulet. Save it for their Lightning Greaves turn. I'd also recommend, for the most part, probably don't play AB. I think AB is usually not that effective against Cecilio. Often armor is just higher value. Just get the blocking value out of your armor and go for as assertive a strategy as you can. He doesn't block well, and if you can get his life total low, you give him less time to combo you and do something really powerful. So I think that's like often the way to go. Unless like maybe if you're like Florian and you have Dyadic Carapace where you have armor that also is AB, you could probably play that. But for most heroes, you don't really want to play AB.
Then let's move on. Let's talk about Dash.io. So Dash.io didn't lose anything, didn't gain anything. Just the regular aggro deck that's kind of easy to block out. And because all the decks are just like kind of good at blocking right now, Dash.io has this weakness of just like getting blocked out right now.
Yeah, I think Dasho always kind of has a little bit of this, and I think that Dasho is probably a little worse in this meta than before. You were really good into Syndra. Dasho is kind of the aggro deck that beats all the other aggro decks. She's like the anti-aggro deck is usually how I think of her. And I feel like if you look at our tier list, aggro is like a little absent this meta, at least so far, or not as strong. There are some aggro decks on our list. We're actually getting to them now. Acilio, Dash.io. We have more of them coming up, but they're not quite as strong, which makes Dash.io a little bit less attractive. The Gravy decks have gotten more defensive, which is harder. Kasai is a tough matchup for you. She blocks really well. She also pressures your life total. Verdant's kind of similar deal. I think your Verdant's matchup's solid, but it's not easy to play. Marionette is kind of tough. Florian is quite hard. So yeah, I think if you're really strong at Dash.io, she has enough tools that she can win these matchups, and a strong Dash.io pilot I think can still do well, but maybe more of like a specialist deck. Like I think good Dash.io deck players will play or do well. I think I saw Sam Sutherland won his RTN on Dash.io. Doesn't surprise me. This deck makes a top 8 somewhere. Wouldn't surprise me, but I also don't think it's like just on power level, this deck isn't like a tier 1 deck. It's definitely tier 2. You can play it, you can do well. You need to really know what you're doing. You have okay matchups, but nothing super great either.
Then we'll move on and talk about Syndra next. Syndra is just below Dash.io. This deck just feels like an average aggro deck now. It's just not impressive anymore.
Yeah, I think it's like not as bad as some people think it is. There was a Syndra that at our RTN, they made top 4. They got their invite. I know that there was Syndra, like a Japanese RTN that some people have been talking about, and I've been seeing Syndras cropping up just based on like anecdotal people talking about their experiences. But I do think the deck is a little bit worse, and a little bit worse just kind of matters a lot in the end game. I think Kasai is also just tough for you, and that matchup was like quite close before, but losing a few points just feels like my experience in that matchup has been you just kind of lose by a little bit, but you seem to do it pretty consistently. It's like you're just like a few points behind, but it's really hard to make up those points unless you draw really well. And you don't really have Wrath of Retribution to have that spike turn to catch you up either. So yeah, I think the combination of lower consistency and losing your spike turn makes it really tough. I think most lists that I've been seeing are mostly red line, maybe a couple extra blues, a little more draconic leaning so they can play Oath, lots of fealty generation, similar to the list that I posted on Patreon. But yeah, I think that there's something here. I think that Syndra is still a good deck, but she's not. She's maybe like one of the top 6 or 8 decks in the format rather than top 2, is kind of how I would put it. She's good. She's not incredible, though.
Yeah, losing Wrath of Retribution's ceiling is what was a pretty big detriment, and the consistency with the brand. So yeah, honestly, the bannings hurt this deck the most.
I think so. I think so. Yeah, and the thing I will say is there's quite a bit of room to explore. We kind of seen Florian decks reimagine themselves and potentially be strong. I think that there's a chance that Syndra can do similarly. We kind of saw Syndra like I had some initial builds of Syndra. She won 2 calling. She did really well. She kind of fell off a little bit, partially because there was better aggro decks in Aurora and Viscerai. But we kind of saw the deck keep getting tuned, and then become really strong again. And there was kind of lots of the decks looked a lot like my initial builds, but there was just like enough small optimizations that I think that Syndra decks got quite meaningfully better. I think she's that kind of deck where just like because she always wants to get to 3 draconic chain links, it's sort of like how do you do this as consistently as possible while also getting as much value as possible, and finding that balance is like actually quite tricky. So I think that we will probably see Syndra decks evolve over the next several months, and it will probably take quite a while to solve Syndra lists. I see like the Syndra lists I see are all there's like maybe like 50 cards they're all playing, and then the rest like people are trying all kinds of different things, and I think we will, as that crystallizes, she might get better, is what I will say.
I'm just thinking right now, do you think Dual Threat might make it back into Syndra and to get that ceiling back? You know, a 0 for 6 is kind of nice.
I think Dual Threat's really tough in Syndra. She can resolve it, but you need both daggers to start, and then it's often hard to get your daggers back. You also don't, you get a lot of, it is a 0 for 6, but you're often not as good at threatening Mask on the turn because you have a card that doesn't take chain links, and it requires you to, sorry, it doesn't make any chain links, and then it also requires you to break the chain. So it's quite hard to threaten Mask. So I think Dual Threat's like fine in Syndra, but not great. Sort of.
So you're telling me we're playing Mask of Pouncing Links now?
I don't know about that either, but maybe that's the direction. Maybe that's the direction you could go, but I don't know. I think Momentum Flick Knives is still the strongest thing that Syndra has going for her.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, then next on the list we have KO. This is it Armed and Dangerous? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the OG heavy hitters KO. Deck's still pretty good. Kasai's not great for you though. If Florian gets good, that matchup stuff, you're pretty okay into Gravy and Verdance. He's just like a powerful deck that does powerful things, but I don't think he has especially great matchups, is like kind of how I feel about this deck. Like I just like looking at all of our other top tier decks, and he's like, there's nothing that you want to see there. Like Kasai, Gravy, Verdance, Marionette, you don't really want to play those. You don't really want to play Florian. You're probably pretty good into Fang. You're great into Acilio. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, KO is always a deck that's I'm just like, I feel like I either lose to it or they lose to themselves more than anything else. So I'm just like, it's so hard for me to put KO into tier 1 territory just because it has the 20 or 15% of the games like it kind of just loses to itself, which kind of means that you play anything more than 6 rounds, you're gonna lose to yourself at least once.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that is also just like you can win matchups into most of these decks, but it feels like most of them like you kind of need to high roll. Like I just feel like this deck is so. When KO came out, he was this mid-range deck that had these spike turns, and he was quite stable. I think right now KO is really kind of forced in a spot of having to be really high rolly, really explosive, really high ceiling, and it sort of creates this effect where the powerful turns are incredibly powerful, but he needs to hit something like super, super strong, like a 4 attack blood rush type turn, something like this. He kind of like needs to find that in a lot of these matchups. And you can't always do that. That's kind of the problem. So like sometimes you lose to yourself, you discard like a blood rush to a wild ride, and you probably lose that game. But also even outside of that, it's like often just playing a consistent game where you don't have something catastrophic happen doesn't necessarily mean you win either. Like you need to like have like a good draw, and the deck is built to draw well. Like it's so this maybe not quite as bad as I'm making it sound, but it makes it hard to be consistent in these matchups. Basically, like I think you're just like 50-ish, maybe slightly unfavored into a lot of these decks, but you don't have many decks at the top of the format where you actually have like a good, solid, reliable matchup. You're sort of there and you're like, I can high roll them, but yeah, it feels powerful, but a little high variance.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do you know a deck that is like kind of more stable than this? And like you were explaining the mid-range KO deck, and the next deck that we want to talk about, which is RKO, which is the underhanded cheat. This is the deck that kind of feels the most stable right now, right? Like you're kind of just like keep on doing the same stuff, and as long as the one caveat you have higher life than your opponent, you really do just kind of get to be like above rate, above rate, above rate, above rate all the time.
Yep. I think RKO is like really good numbers deck, does some pretty powerful stuff. I don't know if the meta's it's sort of weird. I don't know if the meta's great for him right now, but I also don't know like exactly what changed. So it's possible I'm just like not high enough on this deck, maybe. I'm just looking and like I think Kasai is pretty good into you. Your Gravy matchup was always like not super great. Your Verdance matchup, not super great. You're pretty good in Marionette though. Um, but it's not like your Syndra matchup was fantastic. I think your Syndra matchup was probably better than your Kasai matchup though. So maybe that's the difference. I don't know. I guess RKO is pretty good into these tier two decks. Is what I will say though.
I feel like RKO is just like pretty good in general. It's just like very
Yeah,
little people play this deck.
yeah, I think that's true, and I think that your Gravy matchup is like not great, is what
Yeah,
I'll say.
yeah, I will. Yeah. That is the one thing. I wish RKO had two hands, but it
Yeah,
doesn't. So the gravy matchup is kind of abysmal.
yeah, and I think the Verdance matchup, if they're really strong, is also a little tough. So I think that's like the thing about RKO that makes it probably in this tier two category. You have like a few too many matchups to be tier one, but you have really good numbers. You have a strong game plan, and I think that you can beat a lot of gravies and verdances, especially at the RTN level. So yeah, I think RKO is still probably quite a solid RTN choice. He's like you can do better than RKO, but you can do a lot worse than RKO is how I feel. And I think a lot of these decks in tier two, like I think Dash.io, Syndra, KO, RKO are all kind of in this category of like you can bring them. You can probably win or top four with them. I expect to see these decks pick up some wins over the RTN season, but I don't think they'll be the most winning deck. But you know they're not embarrassing either. They're reasonable choices, is how I would put it.
Honestly, RKO is a deck that I kind of want to be playing right now, but one, I don't have the cards. Two, I would rather play Kasai or Gravy. And three, if I am gonna move away from Kasai or Gravy, I'm always playing Huntsman. So why does Huntsman have to be so bad? So sad.
Yeah, definitely tough.
Yeah, then the last deck to talk about here is the last brood here. It's Rhinar. I'm not a believer of Rhinar, but I know in some of our armories that Ellie has been doing fairly well with Rhinar. What is this deck? Like I haven't really seen this deck around online either.
I think Brenner just got like pretty good between Super Slam and the Armory deck. His Blood Rush Bellows are pretty consistently super strong, and I think his non-Blood Rush Bellow turns got better with more blue sixes, with Bear Destruction, with more swing bigs. I think where Reinar excels is kind of two ways. He can do a bunch of damage while throwing Disruption, which is great into a deck like Acilio. And he also generally does pretty well into blocky decks because Intimidate is really high value. So I think that like I guess I haven't played Reinar Kasai, but I imagine he's like probably okay into Kasai. Um, he's okay into Gravy. You have two claws to clear allies, and you can intimidate and blow them up sometimes. It's not the greatest matchup in the world, but it's like quite playable. I think your Verdance matchup is solid. I think your Marionette matchup is actually surprisingly like pretty good. So I think that Reiner has like a real angle into this meta. I think he's quite solid. If Florian starts doing well, I think Florian's tougher for you. So yeah, he's not one that I've spent as much time on. I have played this deck. I do believe in this deck. It's a little bit higher variance than I would like to play, so that's why I don't spend more time on this deck. But yeah, I think he's just like pretty good, is what I would say.
Okay, that's pretty fair. That's pretty fair. Honestly, just being a brute with two hands, yeah, it kind of makes sense that it's like gonna be doing okay in this meta of like gravy, you know, like just gravy is always gonna be the crux of like if you can play a deck or not. The other two brutes is kind of really getting held back by like its lack of ways to clear the allies. And but Reinhardt just has two claws, like two mandible claws is like really good at clearing allies. So okay, I can see Reinhardt doing pretty well.
And I think intimidate. I think like intimidate's the other big thing. Intimidate's just like pretty good in this format. I think better than it's been in some time. And even against gravy, like that's the funny thing about it is you can kind of just blow them up sometimes. Like I don't know if like I don't want to say your gravy matchup's like fantastic or anything, but you hit them, you clear their allies, they get a bit low, and like your blood rushes are just like a lot of damage. You're gonna leak some damage, and you get some good intimidates. Like you intimidate a blocking card, they're left with two allies. You hit them for 20. Like you could just. I've seen games where Reiner just blows up gravy kind of out of nowhere, and it's just this combination of intimidate plus you have no blocks in your deck, and yes, you can gravy to try and fix it, but yeah, he can just be really explosive in kind of an unfair way. And I think a lot of these decks playing a longer game gives him the time to find those unfair turns. So I think that he's like pretty solid. Again, suffers from consistency, so like just like KO, I guess, in a way where it's like hard to be consistent enough to really be tier one or anything like that. But yeah, I actually think Reiner is quite a solid choice.
So those were all our tier two decks. I'll read them out real quick. So Florian Fang, and then Acilio Dash, Syndra KO, RKO, and Rhinar. There are going to be other decks that we didn't talk about that you could play and probably do well at, but these are the decks that we think will be at least in the top of the winning meta game shares, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think you should probably expect to see most of these decks. Maybe Reiner I wouldn't expect to see, but is one you can play. I think the rest of them though would definitely, and maybe Fang. I'm not sure how much Fang will get adopted, but the rest of them I think you will see for sure.
I do just want to shout out the couple of decks I play, which is going to be the Guardians. I feel like Victor is probably going to be your best choice if you're going to play a Guardian. The meta is like a little bit slower, which is always good, but I don't think the Guardians are still good just because like it's still so hard to beat the Gravies. Guardians didn't get anything new. Chart the High Seas was not even part of the problem. And just the one power allies is still going to be tough to deal with. So I don't know what we can get. Like Guardians just kind of need a card to be able to. Imagine we get Wrath the Sky. Oh, sorry, not Wrath the Skies. Wrath the God is the main one. Sorry. If we get a Wrath the God to destroy all allies on the field, man, Guardians will be so playable.
Yeah, yeah. You don't have enough action, and you don't have enough efficient access to action points to really deal with Gravy Bones, and you don't really do enough damage to ignore the allies. Is kind of what it feels like.
Oh my god. Do you know what card I would love? Is if we just got like scab skins. I would just play Sledge, play scab skins. My opponent plays a bunch of allies, roll that scab skins with 3 cards, and then I'll swing the Sledge twice. I'll be so happy with that. Like, let me high roll the gravy.
Jeez. Yeah. Guardian definitely needs something to compete with Gravy. I think the combination of Gravy and Verdance is really tough on the Guardians. I think maybe Verdance probably going to LL either late this RTN season or next PQ season. We'll have a better idea after seeing all of the I don't know results from the weekend, I guess. But yeah, I think Verdant's likely on her way out before too long, and that doesn't fix your Gravy matchup, but maybe that's good enough. Losing one of your really bad matchups, if you have enough other reasons to play it, it's far more reasonable. I guess is how I would put it.
If gravy LLs?
If Verdance LLs, if Gravy LLs as well, that's like obviously really good for Guardian. But in the more immediate for future, I think Verdance is going to LL, and that takes away one of your really bad matchups. So instead of having 2 really bad matchups at the top of the meta, you have one really bad matchup, which like I think is meaningfully better. If you have enough other good matchups, I could see Guardian maybe having an angle once Verdance goes. We'll have to see. I think a lot will shift once Verdance leaves, basically.
Yeah, I just need Gravy to leave, in my opinion. I think Verdance is definitely beatable. You just need to play like very specific cards. Whereas like the cards that specifically beat Verdance does absolutely nothing into Gravy. And then the other way around is also true. Like the cards that beat Gravy does absolutely nothing into Verdance. So
Well, by that logic, if Verdance leaves, that should help a little bit, right?
the only problem is that the cards that specifically beat Gravy, there's not enough of them still. Like
Sure.
the cards that we need to be considered playing is other than the one that's like on hit make a gold is the on hit gets go again. The one with dominate. I don't know what it's called. It's like a 0 for 3 on hit gets go again.
That's fair. That's fair. You know, I'm not as down on Guardian as you are. I think if Verdance leaves, Guardian has a real shot. That's sort of my take. I think that like if you look at these decks, most of them are bad into like one of the tier one decks. Like even the tier one decks into each other. Like I think Gravy's not great into Kasai. I think Verdance is not great into Gravy, and I think Marionette is not great into Gravy. And Kasai is okay into Verdance, okay into Marionette. Like they just like have bad matchups into each other. And even in the tier two, like a lot of these decks have like at least one of these decks that they don't really want to see typically, or kind of like none of them are good. So I think that Guardian, like, it kind of depends what the rest of the format looks like. But just a bad Gravy matchup, I don't think is actually enough to hold back a deck. I think if there's enough other reasons to play it, it can still be good. So I don't know. I think that Guardian can be good with Gravy in the format. It just needs to be good enough into all the other stuff, basically. It might not be like
Mm.
tier one, but it might be good enough to be tier two. I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't know. It's just my take is like every time I bring a guardian to a tournament, I'll do like really well into everything else, and then I get paired into the first gravy, lose. Get paired into the second gravy, round 5, lose, and now I'm out of top 8, and I'm just like, this tournament kind of just disappeared because there was 3 gravies in the field. It's kind of like always like my experience playing Victor.
Sure. I don't know.
Like I don't know. It's just like having that one bad matchup that like because I don't feel like teching 5 or 6 or 7 cards in the matchup doesn't even put the matchup favor towards you. Doing that feels like a mistake, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. I don't disagree. You're playing Gem Lotto a little bit. I think you can play Gem Lotto and have a playable deck. Is what I'm saying. I just think that like when there's two decks at the top of the meta, it's just too bad.
Yeah, you play into a gravy, then you play into a verdance, and then you play into a gravy. You just
Yeah,
wanna throw that deck in the garbage. So
yeah. It's just like your odds of hitting a bad deck are just like a little bit too bad for I think me to really believe in Guardian. But I think when you lose Verdance, it really depends on the rest of the meta. But like if you have a bunch of solid to favored matchups in the rest of the meta, like I could see Guardian being pretty good. You know, maybe not tier one, but like you can bring it, you can top it, you can do well. But I think yeah, all the Guardians need to lose one of these really bad matchups, I think, and then we'll see what happens. It's like not for sure that it's good, but it's like you can start thinking about it again. I feel like.
I agree with you. I agree with you. It's I honestly think that Guardian is kind of favored into a lot of the decks that we talked about here today,
Yeah,
except for the 2 decks that we specifically mentioned.
yeah, I think so. And yeah, I think yeah, I really think that one bad matchup is acceptable. Two bad matchups is a bit of a death sentence. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But my prediction, Guardian come back a little bit once Verdance goes, assuming that there isn't another deck that in that interim that dunks on Guardian. That would be like if they release another Enigma or something, then like okay, we have problems again. But we'll see. We'll see.
Please, LSS, don't do that. Do not do that. Please. Like give Guardian life. And then just the last deck I want to quickly mention, don't play it, is Huntsman. Don't play it. This deck sucks. Uh, I feel like if you maybe have like 60 to 100 games on Huntsman, you could probably bring it and steal wins from a lot of people. But if your opponent is relatively good at the game and then has experience into Huntsman and has like a game plan into you, they get to execute that game plan 100% of the time against you. So it's really rough. That's all I can say. Like when they have a game plan into you, oh my god, you give them 30 turns to do it, and they just always get to do it. It's miserable. I wouldn't play Huntsman.
Yeah, fair enough. I think Huntsman's maybe a bit of a labor of love. If you can play it if you really want to, but yeah, maybe probably not as strong as these tier two decks. I think Huntsman is like maybe just under these. I think that you can do worse than Huntsman for sure, um, but you can also definitely do better than Huntsman. Like there's quite a lot of choices that I think are better than Huntsman, but Huntsman is okay.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. Huntsman's playable. Like it's not
Yeah,
embarrassing to bring this deck.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I
Great.
wouldn't expect to. I wouldn't expect to like top eight and like top four with Huntsman, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like you could do it, but it's not the most likely. Whereas I think that these tier two decks are honestly, especially for top four, I think you can like pretty reasonably top four with any of these
Yeah,
tier two decks, and winning is also possible.
I agree with you. Man, I was so close to top eighting. Oh, come on! If I just the pairings were like switch round two and three, I probably top eight. Ah, would have been an experience. Okay, so that kind of wraps it up for our like meta tier list type episode for this RTN season. Do you have anything to say before we wrap the episode?
I don't think so. I guess I'm trying to figure out what to play for calling Akihabara. I think it's probably Kasai. That was my plan. But now I'm like, man, what if this Florian deck's good? But I'm kind of out of time to test. I leave tomorrow, so I'm just like, maybe I'll play Florian and Armory. If Florian's good, so reasonable. I've played a bunch of Florian. I can play that deck. It sounds so relaxing. I feel like Kasai is like my plan. If I play Kasai, is bring her to side events at Akihabara on Friday, play as many side events as I can, and hope that that gives me enough reps to smooth out the stupid mistakes. I feel like I understand how to play Kasai and I understand like the strategy and I'm like pretty good at playing Kasai overall, but I will just like make some dumb mistake like not realize I could have activated Kasai and I should have activated Kasai. And it's like not even like I'll do this all the time, but like somewhere in the tournament I'll do this. And it's like it's not like I can't remember dynamos, but I'll miss it somewhere and like I'll just make some stupid, like silly mistake somewhere. I think I have like mechanical errors with that deck. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. We'll see where I wind up.
Okay, I believe in you. I believe you can top it another calling.
Yeah, I think they're both pretty good. So I don't know. We'll see. Neither deck is rocket science. I think they're on the easier end. They're kind of playing fundamental flesh and blood, which, yeah, is always the comfy thing to be doing. So
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Honestly, I just kind of want to see you play Huntsman once. That'll be so funny to watch.
I don't want to play Huntsman.
You should try. You should try a deck that kind of forces you to have like a 4 card 3 someday. Like, I just want to see this.
This sounds like exactly what I don't want to play. I like decks that just have like nice consistent numbers, get to play nice flesh and blood. This is kind of why I'm playing like Kasai or Florian. They just, they just do good numbers. They just convert and they just play the game and you get like a reasonable game because you just keep doing good numbers and you can yeah, you got to play the game and have a close game with your opponent. That's the type of deck that I like.
Are you saying that you don't feel the joy when you play like when your turn is blocked for 6, then pitch a blue attack with dagger, corrosive tendency just to rip 1 card from your opponent's deck? Doesn't that sound beautiful?
No.
Yeah, you won them, and then you get to pick up their rampant life growth and put it in their banish zone. It's game winning. It's match deciding.
Yeah, no. Doesn't sound like how I like to play the game. I can respect it. I get why people like these decks. It's definitely not for me though.
Okay, fair enough.
I think that's gonna wrap us up. Thanks for listening this week. Good luck to you in your RTNs. Kind of a wild format. I feel like with it coming up so fast after holidays, it's like hard to feel prepared. I don't feel prepared. Nobody I talk to feels prepared. we're just kind of in there. And then this format's going to change again in a month with Compendium. So yeah, it's a very interesting, like, small micro format. And yeah, I hope you're enjoying it, and I hope that you have good luck at your RTNs and that you can get your qualifications for nationals. If you want to submit questions to us or get in touch with us, you can find us on social media. Jay is at Ueda J on Twitter. I'm at Yuki Lee Bender on Twitter as well as Blue Sky. You can email us at onthebobble@gmail.com, or you can find us on our Patreon Discord. It's available to all of our patrons, and that's patreon.com/onthebobble. But yeah, that's going to be a wrap for this week. Best luck to you in all your upcoming events.